I seduce your dad type. I'm the bad guy.
Tell about the girl next door. So around the time I lived in New York with my sister and dad, across the street there was a girl. I never knew her name, but she was really pretty. I had to be 11 and her herself maybe 15, 16. I was always playing outside and ever so often she came out to take a baby for a stroll. Back then it never really occurred to me that she was a teen mom. Truthfully, I thought that baby was her little sister. And the baby would cry all the time, and she could never get the baby to quiet down. The guy she lived with, which I believe was her dad, would get mad at her when she couldn't quiet the baby down. There was a particular night after 4th of July, the baby was crying, and again, she couldn't get the baby to stop crying. At that time, I was outside jumping rope, and I heard a slap and a pound against the door, and the baby stopped crying. I was scared that something happened to the baby, but come back for part 2 so I can tell you guys what happened. Part 2 of the girl that lived next door. So like I said, the baby was crying, and in the middle of the night, I heard a slap and a pound against the door, and the baby stopped crying. I was afraid that something had happened to the baby, so I ran across the street, and I listened to the sounds behind the front door. The guy that lived there had opened the door, and I fell into the house. He yelled at me saying, "What are you doing on my property?" When I got up and I looked up, the baby was on the ground and the girl had bruises on her face. I told him I was sorry and I asked what happened to the baby. He yelled at me, telling me to get out, and the girl got up to pick the baby up and the baby started crying again. I got scared and ran back across the street. And the next day, the man came back and knocked on my door. Come back for part 3. Part 3 of the girl that lived next door. So, like I said, the man came back and knocked on my door. My sister had answered, and he asked my dad, but around that time, my dad wasn't home, so he just left. From then on, I was kind of afraid of going outside because I was afraid that the man was going to see me, so for a whole week, I never came out. When I finally decided to go out, I asked my sister to come with me and play jump rope. While we were outside playing jump rope, our neighbors across the street, 2nd floor, blinds opened, and I looked up because the blinds are never open. As we were looking, the words "help me" were on the window, and which appeared to be written in red lipstick. We got scared and told our dad, and my dad immediately called the police, but after the police visited, they told my dad that there wasn't anyone in there. No baby, no girl, just a man living across the street. Said maybe we were seeing things or reading things wrong. It gets really bad after this. Come back for part 4. Part 4 about the girl that lived across the street. I think maybe a month after the incident, I stopped seeing the girl and I stopped hearing the baby. And I kind of stopped thinking about them for a while. I thought maybe her and her little sister moved with their mom and left the guy who I thought which was their dad. I'd say that next year I finally saw the girl, but this time she was much skinnier. She had came up to me and asked me if I seen her daughter. I said no, and she walked away. I was confused at first because I didn't know that baby was hers. Then years later, it was my prom night. Before I took a step out of my house, I seen out my window that an entire police SWAT team came to arrest my neighbor. Then they went into the house and there were multiple girls. Had to be like 8 of them coming out of his house. And some of the girls looked really weak. Lastly, there was a little girl, and she had to be like 6, 7, and I thought it was crazy, like, how did all those girls get in there? To this day, I wonder what happened to the girl next door, and if she ever found her baby. Am I wrong for breaking up my best friend's relationship with her boyfriend? Some people may say it was petty, but I think it was justice. So my best friend at the time, which we're going to call Coco, had a boyfriend, and we're going to call him Nick. They met in high school their junior year, and they were together for about like 2 years. Nick was seriously in love with Coco. He would literally do everything for her. Honestly, Nick was like her little puppet. Honestly, throughout the relationship, I felt as though Coco really didn't respect Nick. I mean, the things that he did for her, I wish a man would do for me. And I just really felt like she didn't really appreciate him. If I was in a relationship with Nick, the relationship would have been mutual. I seriously believe that Nick deserved better because Coco wouldn't do anything. She literally added no value to the relationship, but Nick, he would buy her things, took her shopping, went on dates, went on trips, and Coco had nothing to show for it. So I made a plan to steal her man, and in the next part, I'll tell you exactly why I decided to. Part 2 on why I decided to steal my best friend's man. So, like I said, the relationship between Coco and Nick wasn't mutual. Coco seriously did not deserve him. In the process of their entire relationship, Coco was cheating on Nick. And as a best friend, I tried to keep it cordial, but I just didn't like how Nick was getting treated, especially with all the things that he was doing for her. And you won't even believe the person that she was cheating on Nick with. My crush. And she knew that was my crush. She tried to hide the fact that she was talking to him, but I ended up finding out through mutual friends. I never confronted Coco about it because I just wanted to see if she would be honest with me, but for weeks she never did. So one day I decided to go to Nick's house, and I practically told him what it was. At first he didn't believe me, but then once he realized me, out of all people, would come to him about the situation, he understood and felt heartbroken. So we created a plan to hurt Coco. Come back for part 3. Part 3 on why I decided to steal my best friend's man. So, like I said, I went to his house and told him that Coco was cheating on him. And all necessary, I really don't know what Coco was doing with my crush, but I heard from other people that she was talking to him. And honestly, that was enough information for me. And we decided to plan a romantic sneaky link and invite her an hour later. In the process of us doing this, I didn't expect anything to happen, but it did. And I don't know if he expected anything to happen that night, but he practically ended up cheating on Coco with me. Later that night, when she finally arrived, Nick told her she actually needed to go home and that he was busy doing something, even though he invited her to come over. She felt something was off, so she ran upstairs to his bedroom, which was where I was. When she saw me, she yanked me by my hair and pulled me out of the bed. And the rest was history. I ended up finding out 2 weeks later after that incident, the only reason why she was talking to my crush was to get him with me. This story time is from a follower, and she really needs advice. By the way, we're calling her Kalani. Kalani is 17 years old, and she just got out of a 2-year relationship. About 2 months later, after the relationship ended, she thought she was ready to get back out there. Her friends convinced her to get on a dating app, and they made a profile for her. Occasionally, she'll go on the app and talk to a couple people, but nothing would ever work. In her settings, she made herself available to guys all over the world, but until recently, she decided to change it to her city. As she was swiping through, she came across a profile that looked like her dad. She was honestly shocked, so she clicked on the page, and everything about him was him. His age, where he worked, where he lived. For a moment, she thought maybe this could be a fake page. Then she digged more into his profile and seen pictures that she's never seen before. She doesn't know if she should confront her dad or tell her mom. Give her some advice down below. This story time is from a follower, and he really needs advice. So we're going to go ahead and call him Junior, and Junior is 21 years old. Junior has a medical condition which keeps him from working a regular job. His family supports him, they pay for his rent, they pay for his travels, and they pay for his education. And Junior is gay. He said he's known since he was 12. He said that he has a boyfriend and they've been together for 3 years, which, by the way, we're going to call Drake. Drake has never met Junior's parents, and now he's getting a bit anxious, and he said that he's tired of being kept a secret. Drake has been getting distant, and he doesn't know how long he could stay in a relationship while being hidden. Steven said the only reason why he hides Drake is because his family is very homophobic, and he's afraid that his family might cut him off. He's afraid that he might become homeless, and he doesn't want anyone else trying to take care of him. But he's afraid keeping him a secret might make him lose Drake. Please comment down below, or please make us. This story time is from a follower, and she seriously needs help. We're going to call her Aliana, and she's between the ages of 19 to 24 years old. So, Aliana has a daughter, and the child's father, which we're going to call Kobe, are co-parenting. Ever since she gave birth to their daughter, Kobe had been dismissing her about everything. He constantly questions her about everything that she does, and she said it gives her really bad anxiety. He can be mean at times, and as of recently, Kobe had her under the impression that he opened up a credit card with their daughter's social security card without talking to her about it. When she expressed to him that she really didn't appreciate that, his response is, "She's my daughter. I don't have to run anything by you or anyone else. I'm going to do whatever I want." And it's been like that for every situation. She's trying to get some respect out of him as the mother of his child. At this point, she'd really rather him be a deadbeat than a father at all if this is what she has to deal with. She's cried to her family about it, but they really don't know what to do. Please comment down below some advice or make...
If you're alone right now, don't watch this video. In the winter of 2018, a man who was living alone in the mountains wakes up to find a red ball sitting on his front yard. He assumed the only neighbor he had must have kids, and so he kicks the ball over the fence, goes inside, doesn't think anything of it. That night, he wakes up to the sound of kids laughing outside of his window. He goes outside to check on them because it's the middle of the night, and there's no kids anywhere, but that red ball is back on his property. So he picks it up, brings it in his house, and goes back to bed. The next morning, he goes over to his neighbor's house to let them know that their kids were out in his yard in the middle of the night. But it turns out his neighbor is just some old man who lives alone, and there aren't any kids anywhere in the area. That night, he wakes up again to the sound of kids on his property, and when he looks outside, there's no kids, but that red ball is back on his property. Panicked, he runs downstairs to make sure the one he brought in is still inside, and it's gone. He checked every window and door, and everything was still locked. It didn't make any sense. He decides to look out the window one more time, and off in the distance is some weird, stiff figure watching him.
This is why you should never Google yourself. Some of us might have done it once or twice, but for Honora Petrova, one simple search led to horrifying consequences. Honora had always wanted to be an ice skater. She was young, talented, successful, and had a famous trainer. The night before her first big championship win, she felt more anxious than usual. For fun, she Googled herself and came across a Wikipedia page saying that she would win. When she did win, Honora thought this must be a coincidence. But every time after that, the page would predict whether she won or lost. She checked it every single time, almost addicted to refreshing that site. When she was about to compete in another huge competition, she decided to manipulate the website by changing the outcome it predicted. But instead, it said, Honora Petrova is going to get what she deserves. Right after, she was accused of sabotaging another girl's skates, which ended up slicing her in the forehead. Even though Honora denied it, she was banned from the competition and was dropped by her trainer. She thought this must be the worst of it until she checked the website the next day and saw a terrifying message about her. Follow for part 2 of the story.
Ever wonder what would happen if you stopped sleeping? During World War II, the Russians wanted to find a way to keep their soldiers awake longer, so they came up with this awful experiment where they took prisoners of war, put them in a gas chamber, and then exposed them to experimental drugs to see how long they could keep them awake for. Initially, the drugs seemed great. The first 4 days, the subjects were agitated, but were normal. By day 5, they stopped interacting with each other and began acting extremely paranoid. On day 9, one of the subjects screamed for so long that he tore his vocal cord. On day 14, they started eating themselves. When they turned off the gas on day 15, all of the subjects began screaming in pain, begging for them to turn the gas back on. When they didn't, they all fell asleep and died.
You should never talk to strangers in an elevator. One day, a surgeon was working the night shift at a hospital. He just finished his operation on a patient and was going to the basement. He entered the elevator, and there was one other woman already inside. They were casually chatting when the elevator door opened and another woman was about to enter. But the surgeon looked horrified. He quickly slammed the close button and punched the highest floor of the building. Surprised, the woman asked why he was being so rude and wouldn't let the other woman in the elevator with them. The surgeon explained that in this hospital, all patients wear white wristbands with their names printed on them, but the red wristbands are placed on all of the corpses. The surgeon then looks to the woman in the elevator with him and says, "That was the same woman I just operated on. She died on the operating table. Didn't you see the red wristband she was wearing?" The woman in the elevator with him just smiled, raised her arm, and said, "You mean like this one?" Story time, I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Growing up, I loved the fashion industry and loved clothes. I knew I wanted to make that my job in the future. And just to let you guys know, I'm not the prettiest girl. I'm not anything special in terms of looks, but I'm pretty funny and I have a really great personality. When I was 16, I moved to New York to become a fashion stylist, and I quickly started gaining traction. I became an intern at a really big fashion house, and this helped me a lot. As you can imagine, I started meeting a lot of celebrities and just really important people doing this. Although I never really got to style anybody, I was still in the room when they were there for fittings and different things. After a few years, I quit that internship and went into another company. This new company, I was getting paid more and I was just happier in general, and I was able to style a bunch of people on my own. I wasn't styling any celebrities or anything like that, but just basically people that worked in the industry and people that had different events to attend. But one day this celebrity comes in. And no, he's not an A-list or anything, but he's pretty famous.
He came in with his girlfriend, who at the time was also famous. I basically had to style both of them for an event, and it was really fun. But here's the thing. Clearly, he thought I was really funny, and we were making jokes back and forth. The fitting took longer than usual because we had some pieces coming in, so we had to wait for them to come in for them to try it on. But she was clearly annoyed. Obviously, waiting around for clothes is not the most fun thing, but at the same time, we were giving them champagne, we ordered them amazing food, and she was literally getting her tushy kissed. I could tell that he was really embarrassed by her behavior. At one point, he even told her just to sit down and relax, which she did eventually. I left them alone for a few minutes before the clothes arrived. Once they arrived, I came in and I gave him the pieces. She literally ripped the dress out of my hand and went into the changing room. He looked at me and apologized and said, you know, she's just in a bad mood today. And I said, I totally understand. This was my job, so I knew I couldn't react any other way, but I wanted to slap her across the face. While she was changing, he started making small talk with me. I made a few jokes and it actually made him laugh, which I was really surprised. And then he even complimented me about what I was wearing. I mean, I did look really good. When she came out of the dressing room, she started complaining right away about the fit. It didn't surprise me whatsoever, but at the same time, I just really couldn't believe how she was acting. Then I realized that she was probably jealous because he was talking to me. He was like going out of his way to talk to me. They finally left and he said bye. But 2 days later, he comes back by himself. He wanted me to style him for an event coming up that weekend. And that's when I realized I needed to take advantage of the situation. I had the feeling he liked me, but I wasn't going to come out and say it. So I turned up the charm 1000%. We talked for about 2 hours. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of How I Stole a Famous Celebrity's Boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So I knew I had to make my move now or it would be never. The fact that he came in 2 days later and by himself, that let me know that he liked me. Like I said in part 1, he was there for a few hours. We totally hit it off. We even talked about each other's families and what our favorite foods were. So that's when I asked him if he wanted to have a quick dinner. Trust me, I was so nervous to ask him, but I knew I had to do it. And he said yes. We finally got to the restaurant and sat all the way in the back. I kind of got the feeling that he didn't want anyone to see us, but it made sense. That's when I asked about his famous girlfriend. Then he quickly apologized for her behavior and told me that she's never really like that, and I told him that I'm used to being treated that way by celebrities. And he said that I didn't deserve that kind of behavior from her. That's when I asked him if he was happy with her. I could tell the question caught him off guard because he didn't really know how to respond, and that's when he told me that he was happy with her, but he didn't know if the relationship would actually go anywhere. We proceeded to have a few drinks, and I could tell this was really loosening us up. Out of nowhere, I grabbed his hand and kind of massaged it, but he didn't pull it away. That just confirmed the fact that he liked me. Then he asked me for my phone number. We said goodnight and went our separate ways. But for the next week, he texted me every single day saying good morning. Of course, we would text pretty much all day long. I finally decided to tell him how I felt, which he obviously already knew, and he told me that he felt the same. Then he was the one that asked me out, and we actually went to the beach. We were at the beach for about 6 hours and we had such a great time. At the end of the beach day, I kissed him and asked him if he really wanted to be with his girlfriend. He stayed quiet and didn't answer, but the following day he messaged me and told me that he broke up with her. Here's the bad news. We only dated for 3 weeks. On the 3rd week, he actually broke up with me and told me he was dating someone else. I saw it coming. He's now dating another celebrity. The relationship isn't public yet, but I have a feeling they're gonna announce it soon. I keep texting him and asking him to take me back. I was actually falling in love with him. What should I do, you guys?